Hello, and welcome to the third episode of the Project Mbappe podcast with me, Sean Conlon, and Marcelo Grassa. We're coaches and scouts with Premier League clubs, and we've been involved in the journeys of hundreds of players who've signed for academies and many who've made careers in football. On this podcast, we'll be speaking with well-known footballers and coaches about the football journeys of their children and what they're doing to help them achieve their potential. We're looking to discover if there's a secret formula which can guarantee your child making it as a professional footballer. Does Project Mbappe really work? Today's guest is Danny Edwards. Danny is an elite coach who regularly works with Premier League footballers, assisting them with training outside of their clubs. He has a 9-year-old boy named Theo who's signed to QPR's academy, and Theo's been at the club for 3 years since the age of 7. Danny, welcome to the Project Mbappe podcast.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
To get started, could you tell us a little bit about your playing background and how far you got?
So I started off at QPR. I started off pretty late. I started at playing at nine years old. I was at QPR under 11s for six, 7 years. And then the club went into administration, got rid of every youth team. Then I went to America for 3 years, came back, done the whole sort of non-league circuit, Hendon, Havant, Louisville, Conference South. And it was it was money rather than the love for it. And then an opportunity came to work at QPR, and I was there for 18 years. And I enjoyed having a kick about, but it wasn't a passion. It wasn't a love. I think I'd done it for so long where, I just enjoyed playing football, but it would take up Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. And I enjoy football. It's just an enjoyable sport. That's it.
How does Theo's journey compare to yours?
He started off a lot younger. I was 9. I think I was in year 5. Theo, we make footballers. 4 years old.
4 years old.
It's accessibility as well. In terms of when I was younger, my mum and dad would let me play football, and I'd go to QPR soccer school, but that was it. I'd only play football if I was with my friends or at a soccer school. Whereas Theo, we make footballers, QPR, in the garden, just online, YouTube. They've started a lot more. He started a lot more earlier than me, and he's already somewhere where I wasn't, and he's 9 years old now, and this is when I was just starting.
Would you say he's a better player at the age he is now than you were at the same age?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, he's still very raw, but in terms of the foundations, I only learned that at the Centre of Excellence or Academy at QPR from year 5 and year 6. From September, he's starting year 5, and he's already had sort of 3 years of structure, a professional structure, just where they're laying the foundation. And although his ability may not be, his technical ability may not be at the top end, he's built a foundation where when I was learning, I was just raw straight away, and I was just doing whatever I wanted. So in terms of the foundation that he's got, definitely at a different level to what I was at 9.
Do you notice similar characteristics?
Yes, in terms of stubborn, bad loser, having a strop. And I think a parent will always be their child's biggest critique. And for me, it's difficult to watch Theo and not think, he could have done this, he could have done that. But then I really literally just want to be his dad. And it's trying to take what my job is and was at QPR for so long with the academy and what I'm doing now with pro players. It's difficult when it's your son, because my job to work with the pros or grassroots players or academy players is I want to develop their skill, and they're in that mindset where I'm the coach. They're paying for a service where I need to push them. We're not there. My sessions, we're not there to have fun. It's not an after school club. It's not a soccer school. You're there to develop them. And that would go from a Premier League World Cup winner to an under 11s grassroots player. They're paying for a service. Whereas with Theo, I'm his dad. So me telling him, no, you have to do this, there'll be a reaction from him. And then when he's not doing that as his dad, there's then going to be a reaction from me. So it's difficult when I'm working with players to then think, what could I do with Theo, or to compare it to Theo? Because it's just completely different with a player.
Yeah, the dynamic changes, completely.
It's so difficult. So yeah, I want Theo I just want him to enjoy it at the moment. And I know I'm very realistic with his ability and my expectation levels for him. So it's not where he thinks he wants to be a footballer. But he will be very realistic when it comes to that age. If he doesn't make it, he doesn't make it. Because we have very open conversations. So it's not where I'm throwing all my eggs into one basket, or he thinks this is it, I'm going to make it. Like, he's very realistic. So
could you talk more about what you do with the Premier League players? Like, how did you get into that?
So I've known a lot of football players for a number of years.
Right.
And I started a company, K3 Performance, Kaizen 3 Performance, 3 years ago, with the head of performance first team at QPR and a strength and conditioning coach. And we started a company where a lot of footballers during the off season will do football camp, where they'll work on the football, or they'll do fitness camp, or they do strength and conditioning. Our program, our USP is that we will provide what they learn in a football club in one environment. So we will then do the sports science, the strength and conditioning, and the football, the athletic development and the football side of things in 1 2.5 hour training session. But then it's the importance of the sports science behind it. So we'll do GPS data, weight, fat loss, all throughout a whole training session, and then send that information back to the clubs. So for instance, Daniel James, we had him the summer he signed for Manchester United. So all the work that we've done with him, and every professional footballer gets an off-season training program, and the clubs just have to take their word that they're doing it.
Really?
So when they start testing day one, they're like, let's see what levels they're at so we know how far we can push them. Whereas all the players that we had, David Luiz, Daniel James, Jeffrey, any of the players that we had, we then sent that data back to the clubs. So they then knew, okay, Daniel has done X, Y, and Z. We can start him at this level. And just through that, majority of the players wanted just football work anyway. So once the season had started, just talking to players, one player would say, can you come over and just do a little bit with me? Then another player, just through word of mouth. And it's turned sexy all of a sudden on social media, because everyone now is a one-on-one coach and players like to do it. But in terms of at an elite level, there's more acceptance now with players that want to do extra training. Whereas before you had the Frank Lampards that would stay behind with a bag of balls. Now all of a sudden, if you stay behind at training, you're with 5 or 6 players and you're doing finishing. Whereas some players just want to do specific, their own training. So if I'm working with a striker, and the sessions are only, especially the sports science is very important as well. So you can't spend too long on sort of the compound movements on the finishing, because then there'll be muscle fatigue and then pull or strain a muscle. So it's very specific in terms of how much time, but you might spend 8 shots near post finishing right foot, 8 shots near post finishing open your body out left foot. And then you might just repeat that in the middle of the goal and at the far goal. And it's literally just that small, but it's a psychological aspect of it as well, where the players have to feel confident making mistakes and repetition, because they may get that one opportunity in a game where the keeper saves it, parries it out to him, and just that half volley, you're 4 yards away from goal. The amount of people that could potentially miss that opportunity. And it's just allowing, it's so basic what I do with players, but it's just, you're planning for every scenario, how the ball bounces, their body positioning, their footwork, the foot patterns, their movement before they receive it, the movement as they're about to strike it, their upper body, whether they're leaning back. And it's just how you break it down. And what I've found is that the pro players, once you leave under 23 football, individual development stops then, because it's a team game. It's about results. It's not about working on your core skills, working on your footwork. The training is 70 minutes long, and it's phases of play, functions, set pieces, collectively as a team. So up until under 23s, you're learning as a team, but you're doing your individual work as well. Once you're a first team player, your job is to win as a team. So that's where I've got more clients now, because there isn't that much training that they do on their own at the training grounds.
And then you got to think about the young players who make the jump to the first team at an earlier age. They're no longer doing the specific, to improve on themselves.
And I think I've had that experience through being at QPR for so long, where QPR have elevated certain individuals from 18s to 23s to first team. They're missing them 2 years of development because they're now first team. And then it's just about collectively as a team, a result, how have we got on? But individually, how has that person developed? Because you're just looking at, and that's
important. It's vital. Exactly. Crucial.
Off air, you were telling us about recently working with Van Dijk. Can you tell us how that happened?
I was in Portugal doing an off-season training program with some players, and he was there for the first week on his own with his own trainer, just doing bits. And then, his trainer was talking to me and was asking me certain things about the facility. And then, just seeing him every day, it just then turned into doing runs. And then he was coming towards the end of his rehab program, and the Liverpool physios were there doing their bits with him. And I was always working with the players. A lot of my work is obviously pitch work, ball work. And it then turned from Virgil Van Dijk being there with Joe Gomez to me pinging balls into it was so surreal. Like, honestly, it was just so surreal. But it's you're taking players that off, and this is when I said it's now become acceptable. The players that want to put in the work outside of the cameras, outside of production crews, where not everything's being filmed. And the conversations that I was having with him was, he could have played in the Euros, but he wants to be ready for the start of the season, for pre-season with Liverpool. And it's just doing them. He's training for 4 weeks. Whereas a lot of the players that I have during the off season, they'll work 2 weeks leading up to their pre-season program. Whereas his recovery has been very up and down. Joe Gomez is probably a month behind him, but Joe's rehab has been perfect. Whereas Van Dijk's has been up and down. So he's really working on the essence, strength and conditioning, his rehab work, the sports science side of things, where Liverpool brought out the physios to work with him. It's just a great opportunity.
So with Theo, obviously he's aware of you work with all these pro players and whatnot. Is he enthusiastic about training with you as well, getting that opportunity, or is he laid back, or how does he? Yeah, what's his take on all of this?
We probably had this conversation about 4 or 5 years ago when you first met Theo, and Theo is, I don't push it in his face in terms of, Theo knows what I do. He knows the players that I've worked with. He will be the first to tell his friend, my dad's worked with Ronaldo, Neymar, and show him the pictures. But Theo wants to be Black Panther. Like, he doesn't want to be a Neymar, Ronaldo. It's now turning in. He's now 9 years old, going into year 5. He now wants to be a bit more like Ronaldo. Black Panther's still in the way. So it's, whereas there are a lot of children that I've seen when he was at Chelsea, at Arsenal, at QPR now, that were footballers and had footballers' mentality from 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. And Theo was never like that. And it's I'm learning as I'm going along, but my approach was, I just want Theo to enjoy it. I know I don't want to force it onto him. I enjoy football because it's my job, it pays the bills, but yeah, I'm not fussed about it. And I want Theo to have that love. Whereas there's a lot of children, and the one-on-one coaching that I do with children, where they are footballers through and through. And they might only be 7 years old, 8 years old. And this is now a job. This is Theo's first year at an academy. And for the last 2 years, when he was at Tottenham, Chelsea, Arsenal, I would always say to him, do you want to go to training? And there's sometimes he wouldn't want to go to training. And this was the first year when I told him, you signed for QPR. This is it, 4 days a week. You've got 3 training sessions a week and a match. And there's only been a few times this year where he's not really wanted to go to training because he's just not, he enjoys football. He's not diehard through and through, where there's a lot of children, and QPR isn't at the Tottenham, Arsenal, Chelsea level. But even at QPR, there's children there that just live and breathe it. And Theo's at the age now where he's enjoying it a bit more and wants to do a bit more, but it's just natural. Like, it's not forced.
Is it because you had the experience, you know how hard it is, to become a professional footballer? Is that perhaps why you are a little bit more laid back?
I think it's anyone on the outside looking in, from coaches, players, parents, they all think I do so much with Theo, and they must think it's, for me, playing, like, the technical side of thing is all I'm about. Like, I just love skills, nutmegs. And that's the complete opposite to what Theo is. Theo is an athletic player. He's one of the quickest, one of the strongest. Technical side of things, very basic. And that's partly my fault because I don't do anything with him. But it's, I don't want to, I know what he has to work on. Theo knows to a certain degree what he has to work on. But if he doesn't want to work on it, then it will come in time. And one side of me is like, it might come, but it might be too late. And the other side of me as a parent is, if it's too late, it's too late. Like, it's not, I don't want to force it onto him where he's bored of it, fed up of it, gets frustrated. When Theo can't do something, he'll lose his head. And if it was another coach, so he's got a one-on-one coach that he sees, when he pushes him, Theo has that mentality where I want to complete it. When I'm pushing him,
your dad.
So it's
your
very,
dad,
and I've seen the transition from Raheem Sterling, under 9s at QPR. I've been at QPR 18 years. Raheem Sterling, under 9s, Harvey Elliott, Henry Wise, Aaron Drew, players that I coached at 9 years old. Aaron is now, and Kai Innocent, who they're now with the under 23s, B team at QPR. They're 21 years old. I've seen the development from academy players to pro players to first team World Cup, Premier League, international players to grassroots players. And I've learned so much from that, and I will tick every box. But as a parent, I'm learning day by day when it comes to me being a parent, me being a dad, me then being a coach dad with his grassroots team, to me then being a dad where my son's at an academy and I'm sitting on my own just watching him, because I just don't want to be, I just want him to enjoy it. I don't want to be a pushy parent.
Knowing what you know now, would you go back and do anything differently with Theo's development?
Yes, in terms of, I would have made him have a one-on-one coach beforehand, or I would have made him go to more the We Make Footballers sessions where he's being put, not a grassroots session where he's with a local team and it's a dad taking the team. My problem was Theo's development going to the grassroots teams, because it's always the dads that take them. I was always the coach. So Theo's coach has always been me, apart from your sessions.
Well, just to go back on that, just so the listeners understand, like, actually what your approach was, like, from the age of 5, exactly how much was Theo doing each week?
A We Make Footballers session.
So that one session per week.
Yeah.
So that'd be an hour.
And it was,
so 1 hour.
Yeah. And it was literally very inconsistent from me. And this is what I mean in terms of it's full on for parents as well. Sort of, I was still at QPR. I was doing other bits outside, and it was, Theo was We Make Footballers, and then he may have his grassroots team on a Saturday morning, an hour training session that I'll take, and then their match on a Sunday, and that was literally it.
But from 5 years old, was he doing the right? Because it was Rice at Rangers, wasn't it? So was he doing that matches on a Sunday at that age, at year 1?
Oh no! So no. Either it was literally We Make Footballers. I mean, he started off at Little Kickers at like 3 years old, 4 years old.
Yeah.
But then that just wasn't. I could see that he was ahead of that. So that's when I wanted him to have sort of more structured coaching. Then went to We Make Footballers. Then Rice at Rangers. Then was at Chelsea for a year and a bit.
So at that stage, then going into year 2, probably under 7, he'd have been doing Monday session with Chelsea, Tuesday session in Southall with Marcelo, then Saturdays with you and Sundays. So the 4 hours a week. So that's like increasing his program a bit more.
It is, but I noticed a big difference when we went to Chelsea. And that's where obviously Chelsea is at the top end. But at that age, just talking to the parents wanting me to work with their children, what the children were doing then was, they would do,
But I mean, you've just talked there about the need at the very top end of the game to have players work on an individual basis on specifics of their game. But then for a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, what you've talked about there is he's only doing group training. So knowing what you know now, you're saying that you probably would have tried to get some one-to-one training in his program at that time.
Definitely. And it could even be something as simple as a dad working with their child. Like I would have worked with Theo if he would have wanted me to, if there was an interest from him to he'd always have a kick about in the garden, but he'd just be happy just kicking the ball. It wasn't a case of where he'd want coaching or anything like that. But it's that environment where he had gone from a We Make Footballers environment where he was learning the first kind of core skills and 1v1 training, to then going into Chelsea where you were getting boys that technically were on an unbelievable level already at that age. And for me, that was a surprise. I only knew I had worked from under 9s at QPR, so I knew that development level. Whereas pre-academies at Chelsea, I was like, these kids are like 6 years old, 7 years old. And I couldn't believe their technical ability already. And that's my thinking was Theo physically, athletically, was always very good. And I was like, that's fine. That's all he needs, because the technical side of things I can just work on. That was 4 years ago and I've still not worked on it. So it's very difficult and I'm still glad about that, because you can teach the technical side of things. He's not going to be a Jack Grealish or a Foden, that technical side of things. But in terms of, he's got the basic, he's got the foundation, and then it's just now the Project Mbappe starts.
Well, I think that, and this is something we're talking about more and more when we're talking to footballers and comparing their journeys to kids now. Back in the older days, we could go out to the park and we could get our hours of practice in, and we had that freedom. Whereas for kids nowadays, it has to be pretty much organized by the parent. If at 5 or 6 years old, the parent isn't finding a way to organize some sort of hours of practice. Might be lucky that they've got a big garden and they can go out there, but there's so many distractions now as well. The kid doesn't necessarily think, oh, I should go out and practice my drag backs. So yeah, it's very interesting.
And it's very full on for a parent as well. Like there's a lot of dads that talk to me, predominantly dads at the pre-academies when we were there, that would speak to me about, this club's offered this, what do you think? And I would always give my opinion as a coach, but as a parent, it's full on. I mean, I'm lucky, Theo's at QPR, it takes us 20 minutes to get there, 20 minutes to get back. But there are some, when Theo was going to Cahil End or going to Tottenham's train, it's just it's full on. And if it's single parent families, if you've got more than one child, if you've got one son at one club or one son at another, like there's so many, you'll have a full-time job. And it's just the commitment from parents. And that's if your child is at an academy. If your child's not at an academy and they've got to do extra training sessions, the cost of training sessions, if they're at a grassroots team, you can't moan that the training's not great because it's a grassroots team and it's a dad taking it who's probably just got a level 1. If you want them to go to a development center or a paid session, that's an additional cost. And then it's very full on, and it's hard work.
How did you find being the coach of his Sunday team?
I didn't like it, and that's where we started at Ruislip Rangers. And again, I took over just because of my coaching experience, and I knew how to make the sessions fun, but for the boys to develop. And then there was just more and more that the club wanted from me just because of my experience. So then we left Ruislip Rangers. We started another club, MFD, which Josh and Gabe's ran. And it was perfect because I then just got to be a dad. But then because they're at Arsenal and Fulham, they then couldn't do the matches. So they'd take the training, which was perfect for me because Theo could just do training. But then the matches I would then have to take. And it's difficult to work with your child because I know what he can and can't do. And when another player makes a mistake, that's fine. You've just made a mistake. Let's try again. When Theo makes a mistake, he will press that red button in me. And I'm like, just take a touch. Like just Theo. And it's as simple as someone will take Theo on and he still doesn't have it now. And I can feel myself pressing that button as I'm saying it, but he wants players to be a 1v1, and he gives them space to push it past them, to take them on, because he's that confident. You push it past me, you're not going to get it. Yeah. Whereas my thing to Theo is don't allow him that opportunity. Whereas he just wants that challenge of go on, push it past me, and let's see if you can beat me in a race or outstrength me. And because he's got away with it for so long, it's then turned into a habit. So when I'm watching games and it's just trying to, I'd love to just be a parent. But then the flip side of that is when I'm now a parent and I'm watching him at QPR, I have to sit away on my own with headphones in my ear so that I just don't hear anything else from other parents. And that's the one thing that from the home parents and the away parents, so many commentators, and it's just I just want to sit there, watch it. Theo makes a mistake, he makes a mistake. Let the coach do the talking. But there's so many commentators, and I know I probably seem very unsocial. He probably thinks he's better than everyone else, just sitting on his own. But I find it very difficult to bite my tongue when I can hear and see. And what pushes my buttons in games is the game's going on, and the amount of times I see a player look at their dad or look at the parent and they don't understand the effect that is having on the child, where they're looking for recognition. Dad, have I done something wrong? Dad, have I done something right? And it's and that's why I just sit on my own. Theo just plays football. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying what I'm doing is right, because Theo isn't in the top 3, but Theo is just playing football, and he makes a mistake. He knows he's made a mistake. He's not looking at me thinking, oh, Dad, I've made a mistake. So I'm now for the first time being a dad watching my son where I've got no involvement whatsoever.
How did Theo take to you taking the team? Because I'm thinking, 3, 4 years, 5 years down the line with my little boy and how he is now, so strong-willed and whatnot. Whether we're gonna clash,
You will clash.
really,
You will. And it's just speaking to Colin Kazim Richards, who we had in Portugal. His boy was out there, and he was just talking to his boy. And then I came in and done a bit, and he was just saying about, it's a parent and it's a dad, father and son thing. Like, he's telling him, he's got him a one-on-one coach. And he was like, the coach is telling him the exact same as what I am, but boys just don't listen to their dads. Like, so it's very, and I think Theo got used to it. So he would just switch off. Like, it's just dad talking. Whereas some of the kids that I work with, they obviously know the players that I've worked with, and they're just, anything that I say, they'll do straight away. Where Theo's like, yeah, that's just my dad. Like, it's not, and it's little things where he's coach at the moment, he's one-on-one coach, is working with him, and I've said to him, Theo, I tell you to do that. And he's like, yeah, but you're my dad. That's his answer for it. Yeah, and it's just like, I'm not there I want to be his dad. So I don't want to be that pushy parent, but it's pressing my button every time that he says it. And that's just how it is. I've just got to learn to live with it.
I mean, when you talked earlier and you were talking about, you almost sound like a scientist, the way that you're talking about the technical level of the footballers and what you look at. But yeah, that must interfere and affect how you view Theo's football.
Yeah, definitely with what I've learned over the last, and don't get me wrong, I'm learning step by step when I'm working with players and I'm getting the club's off-season training programs and I'm getting the players programs. So it's great for me to learn, but just the sports science side of things where I'm seeing one-on-one coaches, and this could be from strength and conditioning, PT and sessions, to doing runs, accel, decels, to doing the technical stuff.
Yeah.
I'm seeing some sessions on social media that look great for the gram, but how much are they developing a player? And it's so simple. And it's my sessions, I'll have the same blueprint session, but it will just vary depending on the player's needs. And it's just about when you're working on striking with the ball. Like, the most simplest thing is you're repeating something on your right foot that you will do with your left foot. But then it's just, you then break it down, right? What movement will you do before you receive it? What will you then do after you receive it? And it's just it's just getting the players to think about the process. Theo will think about kicking the ball into the goal. But yeah, it's a scaffolding system where you think, okay, what's your movement before you receive it? Once you've received it, what are you then going to do? Once you strike it, once you strike it, what do you do? So my sessions where I've got the rebound net, the players, once they strike it against the rebound net, they have to control it and catch it afterwards, because I want them to get into that routine of following your strike through. Your job's not over just because you've had a strike. And some people will see it as, why are they controlling it and catching it? They're not goalkeepers. But it's just getting players to understand your job's not over once you've had a strike. And then it's still just working on their touch and their hand-eye coordination. And it just doesn't. Some of the sessions that I do with Premier League players, like I'll do with an under 9, and it's just the intensity will change. But it's getting them constantly thinking. They can't just think, I've had a strike, my job's done. But trying to get that through to Theo, it doesn't work.
But off air, you were saying that you're starting to put together a little training program with him now.
Yeah. So when I saw your story a while back, and it coincided with Theo's review at QPR, me actually seeing Theo play, because I hadn't seen him play for a year and a bit because of the lockdown and parents weren't allowed at games and we couldn't view no footage. And then when I saw him to where I thought his level was, I was like, yeah, you can't just be an athlete. And the basic technical skills that he had, I thought, he's got basic skills, but that's fine. Like, we can just develop. Yeah, it wasn't the level that I thought it was. So I had a conversation with him, and we just said to him, you wanted to sign for QPR. You wanted to be here. It's 4 times a week. You will have one more year if you stay at this level. If you want to progress and be in the top 3 and not just be known for being the quick one or the strong one, we need to do more work. And I always compare it. He would always watch. And what I've noticed the last 6 months when I'm doing the one-on-one sessions with players in my garden, he's always watching. And so, but then he sees their reaction. When they get something wrong, they just want to complete it. They want to get better at it. He gets something wrong, he just switches off. He just doesn't. So through our conversations, he now understands, we called it Project Mbappe, where he finishes at QPR on Saturday. So we will have a training program that we're coming up with that will include one-on-one coaching with his one-on-one coach, sessions with me, team sessions, runs, and then games. So there'll be, and it will be, structure is the most important thing to me personally and professionally. And being at QPR for 18 years, there's always been structure, and I want that to be with Theo. He's got his after school clubs, he's got the school, he's got his swimming, he's got stuff that he does. So we've got Project Mbappe, we've got a timetable. He's probably going to be off for 6 weeks. There needs to be an improvement because he wants to be at a certain level. And it's not, obviously I want Theo to be the best at anything that he does, but I've not pushed him because he's not had that will to, Dad, I want to be here, I want to do this. Whereas he now understands he's not in the top 3. And Theo was always known for standing out. Technically, he might not stand out, but if he knocks it past someone and runs, he'll get onto it. And whereas he's not standing out. And with our conversations, that's fine, Theo. You can stay at this level and you're not at QPR because of me. But if you want to be in the top 3, we need to do X, Y, and Z. And if you want to do it, this is what it is going to look like. Yeah. And the problem is the one-on-one, I'm paying a service for a one-on-one coach, which is my job. But Theo needs that because I can work with him every day of the week and he might give me 80%. But when he's with his one-on-one coach, it's 100%. And that's where you just need, it's a different environment. But again, that's another cost that I've got to pay for, and then traveling back and forth. So it's a financial commitment for parents and time as well.
It's fascinating. It's really fascinating hearing you speak about it. Do you give the one-to-one coach ideas, and do you give him information about what you want him to do with Theo?
No, like I literally, Theo's yours. He's okay. Because I get it, and this is what I've learned from and any of the dads that are listening or watching this that I've worked with will understand. Like, I'm very upfront with parents, so I'm not there to sell you a dream. I'm not there to have fun with your player. They can go to an after school club or a weekend session for that. You're there to, when you go, and I always compare it to, you go to the gym, you get a PT because you want to feel sore, you want to see a difference. You're not there to do something that you can do yourself. And it's the exact same with my sessions with parents and players, where I have to push you. You will enjoy it, but you have to be out of your comfort zone. Train harder than you play. And that's how it needs to be with all of my sessions. We need to train harder so that in a game, it's a lot easier for you. And then when I get dads telling me Josh needs to work on X, Y, and Z, that's not a problem. That's your opinion. But then I'm working with Josh. He's flat-footed already. So it's like you can't, and it's difficult for, everyone's going to have their opinion. And it's...
But you're not a dad. Like, you're not just a regular dad. You're probably like one of the best one-to-one coaches out there. So if you're giving that insight, if I was doing one-to-one coaching with Theo and you gave me some heads up on what some of the things that you want me to work on with him, I would take that very seriously.
Yeah, but then I want the coach. I've trusted a coach to work with Theo because I trust their ability. So I don't want them to think, and it's not difficult. You see Theo and you can tell straight away the technical side of things is what he needs to work on. And it's not, if it was a case of where Theo couldn't move, or he's flat-footed, or his movement, or his posture, then there's a load of things that he needs to work on. And I'd say, do you know what? if we can just work on this area. But with Theo, it's so simple to see and don't get me wrong, he can do a job. So it's not me saying he can't play. He can do a job, but anything Theo does, I want him to be the best at. And as long as he wants to be the best at it, I will help him however I can. And the coach and coaches know what he needs to work on.
Think he can make it?
No. Yeah,
What?
no. And this is the thing. It's not, I will. People will say it's cocky, arrogant. I've done this for 18, 19 years, and I could name drop all the players that I've worked with from pro level to academy level. I've seen the growth. I've seen the progression. I know what it takes. I've seen the highs. I've seen the lows in terms of players trying to commit suicide because they've been released, not been offered a pro, and not been able to find a club. And that's just what I've seen and have been involved in the worst side of things. And yeah, I want Theo to enjoy it. Theo isn't. And the problem is parents put so much pressure on kid. A kid isn't going to wake up and all of a sudden think, I'm going to be a footballer. I'm going to be a footballer. I know I'm going to do this. I know I'm going to do. It's pressure, and it's what they're hearing from their parents. Like they might hear it from their friends at school, but what they hear from their friends at school compared to what they go home with are going to be two complete different things. But if they're constantly hearing on a Sunday, once the game's finished, the dad then turns into a coach, or the game's going on a Sunday with their academy team, and the coach is telling them one thing, they're thinking of one thing, their teammates are telling them another thing, and then their dad's also telling them another thing. They finish the game in the car home, their dad's then telling them, you should have done this, why didn't you do it? Yeah, it's they're all of a sudden, yeah, it's just, I know how difficult it can be. Theo enjoys the game. Theo is a good child. So if he makes it at any level, it will be great. He's not going to have the thought where in 3 years' time, he's an under 12 or an under 14 or an under 15. I'm going to make it as a footballer. There's some players that I've got that have just signed scholars, and they're so level-headed where I've got to be careful how or what I say, but there's some players sign scholars and post it on social media, have got their pick for the gram. They think they've made it. There's some players that I've got, Caleb Hughes, a kid that I've had for 2 years, 17 years old, signed 1 year scholar and then a pro with Cardiff. Hasn't even posted it. Cardiff have done a big thing about it because they haven't offered a 16-year-old a pro in about 10 or 11 years, like Craig Bellamy or someone would have been the last one. And it's just having that kind of support system network around you where you just want them to stay level-headed and grounded. And I'm not going to say I know, I don't think Theo will make it pro, but he has the attributes and the ability to be very good at football. And if he gets an opportunity, then yeah, it's down to him whether or not he takes it, because I'm not going to be that pushy dad where I know what he has to work on. Yeah. I know what he's not good at. I know what he's good at, but I'm not going to make him be. And it's the exact same as in school. I always compare it with parents in school. If your child isn't good at Spanish and you're then paying for them to do Spanish lessons every day, and they don't want to do it, but you're making them do it, they're going to end up hating it. And it's the exact same with football, where you want your child to be the best footballer and they're only doing it because you're making them go there. They're going to end up not liking it. And then you come into that crossroad, which I'm at, where Theo now wants to do Project Mbappe for a Cat 1 club. It's too late for Theo now. He's 9 years old. And it sounds stupid me saying that, but he's 9 years old. The next 3 years of his development will be able to tell, all right, what the next step is. Because there is always that under 13 year group where you will always get 2 or 3 players at QPR, Reading, Watford that will then go to that one player that will go to a Chelsea, Arsenal, or a Tottenham because they've been the big fish in that small pond for 4 or 5 years. So, and then it's just a chance for, I'll see what Theo's like at 13, 14 years old. He's a good size. He'll be a lot bigger than me, which won't be hard. He's athletically, he's very strong. So it just depends on what journey he wants to take over the next sort of 3 years. And but you need that. I do wish I would have started it a lot sooner with Theo, but I would have never forced it onto him. So
we're finding that more recently, parents at a younger age are putting on, these extensive programs for their kids, and they're pretty full on. And we always have these discussions because we don't know what the right answer is. But one of the things we do say, we spoke about it in the car on the way here, is does it get to the point where the kid loses interest, or it's just too much for them? But we are finding it's happening more and more, and a lot of the time, these are the players at 6, 7. They are probably the top players at these Cat 1 clubs.
I always say the top 2, 3 players at under 9s very rarely are the top 2, 3 players under 13s, under 14s.
I don't know if I agree with that, No?
But
think about Janelle, think about Harvey Elliott, Arkell.
Oh, we'll have the exception. No, in terms of, So what I mean, so there'll be the top group of players, but then, so we've got the one player, but there's always that group where they're the mate. There's a group, Theo's age group now. There's a handful of players that are everyone in this. They played for MFD. They played for me for like 2 years, and they are at Arsenal, Chelsea, Tottenham. They are the top. But how realistic is it you can stay at the top in 5 years when you haven't got that much competition in terms of although you're being pushed by the coach? In terms of, my thing is that next group down is, I want to be as good as this person. I want to be here. This is where they're at. So you've got that push, and it's just, unless the players in the top have that support network around them that are just pushing them outside, how much can you, as a 9, 10, 11-year-old, push yourself if you don't have that? Because you're still a young...
I agree with what you're saying about the under 13 period of time, where at that stage puberty is kicked in and there's such different sizes with the children physically, and that changes how they play on the pitch massively. And then there might be a kid, because it's so hard to predict what a kid's going to be like when you're looking at them at 7 years old, 8 years old, to predict how much it's going to change.
Harvey,
exactly.
Henry Wise was very small.
So many of those other bigger clubs didn't make enough of a fuss of Harvey to get him to sign at those ages, whereas we did, and we got him to sign QPR.
You did. There we go.
But yeah, I mean, it's a big thing. Like, going back to Theo again, for him coming in at 13, or like looking ahead to 13, with his body changing, and then he kicks on now doing a lot of training over the next few years. You potentially see that jump into another club, or I don't know,
or just be in the top end at QPR. And that's where it's not. There's a lot of parents that follow the badge.
Yes,
and I was one of them.
True.
I was, and this is where what I mean when I say, when I'm learning as I'm going along as a dad, because when Theo was at Chelsea, I could tell Theo wasn't at that level. And then he was at Arsenal for a bit, and then we had a tournament at Hale End, and I remember it was a cold day, and kids were just animals at Arsenal. They were just, they were loving it. And Theo was there. And I think he was just dancing, or he was just doing something where he was just away with the fairies. And I was like, this isn't him. Like, it's not, I've come here, and this is what made me look at it as a parent. I've come here because it looks good. Theo is at Arsenal. Or there's a tournament at St. George's Park and you're playing against Liverpool. it looks great for me to post something on. I didn't, but it looks great to post on the ground. My son's at Anfield, my son's at St George's Park. We're playing Arsenal, we're playing Chelsea, and yeah, you're just chasing the badge. Like, it's not your son Theo, whether it's Cobham, whether it's Hale End, whether go into these. You've got to leave school at 3:30. He's got to have food on the way there, get changed when you're there. He's then got to train for an hour and a half, get foods, McDonald's on the way back or something. You're not getting back. And it's just, and that's just for the player that has been at school since 9 o'clock in the morning and has been up since 7:30. You're not getting home till 8, 9 o'clock. And that's the player. The parent has had to get them up, get them ready, go to work. And it's just, I was just like, what? I'm doing this because I can say my son's.
Is there a side of it which we look at parents, and like you've done so well in your career, and obviously Theo is going to be, is he good at school? Is he doing right? Yeah. Okay. So it's not necessarily that you like need football, but are there parents out there who they really don't see any of the options for their child to be successful? And if they want their child to be successful, maybe they see football as that route to success.
Yeah, this is where I come across unsocial at games, where I'm just on my own. I can hear, and this is from when Theo was at pre-academies, when we're playing all these other teams, and I'm just hearing conversations on the touchline about parents saying it's a competition between parents. Like, and it's a competition between chasing the badge, my son's at this club, to then when your son's at a club, my son's doing this and that. And it's the parent, not the parents are blind, but they have no experience in very few have experience of child and player development through an academy system, and just the psychological aspects and what is required in terms of the preparation for training, for matches 4 times a week, getting offered a 2-year, getting rejected, and then it's then the rush. There's players now that obviously that have been released and didn't get 2 years, and now they're going around looking for clubs. And it's allow your child to go to grassroots for a year, be the best player there, let them boost their confidence, enjoy it, rather than they've just gone from being released, not been offered, they're then going on trial, a new club, they're going to be nervous. If they then get rejected again, what's then got, whereas a parent is just like, right, he's been rejected from club A, let's go to club B. And then they're just going straight into it. Whereas when Theo gets released, he's going grassroots for a year.
Okay.
Because I'm not, my son isn't just going to be going to clubs for the sake of, I want him to be a footballer. If he misses a year, I'm confident enough it's not going to make that much of a difference to him for his life. It might make a big difference for him to become a footballer, but I'd prefer him to play grassroots where he stands out and is a very confident player. And because if you're released at a club at any age, it's for a reason. And it's Theo getting released at Chelsea was for a reason at however old he was. Players getting released as a scholar or as a pro, it's for a reason. So majority, 90% of players, I would say, and parents are aware, I reckon you might get released. I think you're in the bottom 3. There's a potential you might get released. So they know their child isn't up there. So the child's confidence isn't going to be the highest. So if they are released, then let them. I want Theo to play with his mates, go grassroots, and just enjoy it.
Yeah.
And what comes from it comes from it, because my dream isn't for Theo to be a footballer. Like, Theo's dream isn't to be a footballer. Like, it's changing now, but he's not at that age. And that's where I see a lot of parents that will have questions for me or will tell me what they have to show off. My son's doing this, my son's doing this. You're his 3rd session of the day. And it's just like I've had heated discussions with parents where I've given him my feedback where I don't think he should come to another session with me. And it's just in terms of that day, just because of how much they've already done. And the parents don't understand the sports science behind it. And I haven't until the last 3 years, but just in terms of muscle recovery and just your child is going to make more mistakes the longer they're training in one day. And it happens now with the pro players that I have during the off season. Matty, Chris, Joe Willock. They're all at pro clubs. And it's the training that we do. We done a finishing session on Tuesday. And they wanted to do a session on the Wednesday. And I was telling them, you're not going to be able to do it. And I was like, nah, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. And it's, knowing the sports science, you're doing compound movements, the strikes that you're doing, you're feeling fine now. Once you've relaxed that evening, that morning, and all that happened that morning was Chris sent me a message. Yeah, Dan, let's do it on Thursday. Yeah, because it must have been a Tuesday session. Yeah, and that's the whole where parents, and that's pros that are mentally and physically mature enough to know their bodies. These kids will just play. And it's the effect that it then has on them. And that's not even getting into when their bodies are growing, puberty, the Osgood Slatus, and like there's so many, and its parents need to understand just, do one session. And that's when you said about 1,000 hours, and it's 10,000 hours. Yeah, it's like, I am constantly learning how I can develop Theo and how I can make him the amount of screenshots that I've got from, I don't know how many We Make Footballer Instagram pages you've got, but little sessions of things that I can do for Theo. And I'm constantly learning as a parent, but I feel from a football side of things, I know so much, but I only want to put Theo in that position if he wants to be there. And there's so many parents whose children are so good, they're still forcing them and they've got the ability. Theo is okay, and I don't want to push him. So it's difficult. It is difficult.
One of the biggest things I've got from this conversation with you, talking for this length of time on this subject, is the care that you have for Theo and like his welfare, and a lot on the sort of the psychological aspect of his game. I think I really, really hope parents take on board what the information that you've given and your insights, because you're working with players at the top level, and for you to be saying this, I think a lot of parents could learn from this.
I honestly that is my one thing. Parents need to be parents. And I know it sounds simple me saying that, but on a match day, just be my routine with Theo. He's got some videos of him playing. I'll show him them. He'll pick his playlist when we go into football. As soon as he's finished football, I will always say to him, what would you give yourself out of 10? If he says an 8, I'll say, okay, why not a 7? So he then has to think about what could he have done to be an 8. But I will always finish it. I'll always start with why not a 9? So he knows what he needed to do to be a 9. And then I'll always finish it, why not a 7? So he'll always finish it with a positive of this is what. And that's it. Conversations that I've had with parents. Oh, my son didn't. Yeah, and it's your child is under so much pressure already. Don't then add more onto it during the game as well. And then after the game on that journey, because you want to be a parent. So when your child is struggling with something, little Johnny is struggling, Daddy, I can't work on my first touch, or I'm not good at receiving the ball on my back foot. He's then not going to tell his dad that, because his dad's battering him after a Sunday because you've lost possession of the ball. And you're just holding that. And if you're getting that every match, parents were fuming and not happy when they couldn't watch their children play during the lockdown, in terms of when parents weren't allowed to watch the matches. I mean, I thought it was the best thing in the world. Let the children play. They're under no pressure. But then hearing the other side of it from the academy, the standard dropped. Because when your dad's watching you or your parents watching you, you're gonna try. So it's a catch-22. because
It needs
I
to be a
enjoy-
balance, doesn't it? I think the
Yeah.
parents need to be educated more, I think, because they want to have the control of being able to tell their kid, this is what you did, you
Yeah.
done this, you done that. I think it just needs to be a balance, whether it's focusing on educating the parents on that,
Mhm.
on that subject.
And I mean, the FA have the schemes and the programs where they're trying to educate parents and respect the game and stuff like that. But my thing is, be a parent. Be a parent. Let the coach be the coach.
And understand it's a marathon, because like you've talked there about how you're going to now, because he's come to you, Theo, you've now put the training program with him, and you'll probably get, we talked about this sort of 10,000 hours, but you didn't necessarily have to be all the loaded hours when he's 5 and when he's 6, when he had maybe a lighter routine compared to other kids. But now, yeah, he's coming to you. Now you're like, all right, I'll give you a bit more. And then he'll get his hours in.
And this is relatable to Theo's in the middle of the spectrum. You'll have the elite lot at Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham. Theo is in the middle, and then you have the grassroots level. And this just goes throughout sort of every level, from grassroots to Cat 1 academies, in terms of putting ownership on the player, in terms of, I will suggest to Theo, these are what things we can work on. Right, you tell me what you want to do. And it's just Q&A, like it's just getting feedback from, like, it's not a case of Project Mbappe, and I've literally called it because I saw your highlight of this, but we've got 8 or 9 things that we need to work on, from small-sided games, 1v1s, your one-on-one coach, technical stuff. Monday to Sunday, these are the days. You pick what we're going to do. And we will have recovery as well. We will have days where we just, yeah, he'll have swimming, or he just won't do anything. But he needs to own it, because the moment he don't want to do it, and there will be times over the next 6 weeks, he's going to be like, Dad, I don't want to do it. I'll be like, fine, but you're the one that's picked this. Like, why? Yeah, rather than if I said we're doing this, this, and this, the moment he doesn't want to do it, I didn't want to do it in the first place. Like, he's able to then throw that back in my face.
Yeah.
So,
and it's taken to sort of 9 years old to get that, but that's, it just takes that time.
Yeah.
That was his journey. I think it's class. I love your approach. And yeah, for parents I think parents would benefit a lot from listening to this. Danny, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Cheers,
I
mate.
think it's been brilliant. Yes.
And I think, sorry,
go on.
I just want to say this is an unbelievable approach for parents to be educated. When we was talking about the FA doing schemes and stuff like this, like the WhatsApp groups that I'm in, the grassroots, I will definitely recommend this, because I took for granted my education in football. So I just presumed when the academy are saying this is this, or grassroots are saying this is this, I knew it. But finding out from other parents who haven't got a clue about any of the conversations, that this is something that parents and players need to understand, the journey that the player is going to go through, and then the journey that the parent is going to go through. So I want to say to you guys, this has the potential and is definitely what is needed for every level, not just pro level.
Nice one.
Appreciate
Thank
that.
you, Danny. Thank you.
Appreciate that.